Cybercriminals are using social engineering loaded with urgency and fear to successfully prey on victims, your employees, or your customers. Protect your Office 365 email from today's most sophisticated attacks with Barracuda Email Threat Scanner. It's a free tool to help protect your business from these hard-to-detect attacks. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner uses artificial intelligence to hunt and eliminate Office 365 email threats. Find the cybersecurity threats hiding in your Office 365 email right now. Get your free email threat scan at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Adrian Sanabria. Do you want to stay in the loop on all things Security Weekly? Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher or our YouTube channel. Sign up for our mailing list, join our Discord server, and follow us on our newest live streaming platform, Twitch. Security Weekly is excited to announce that Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through 8th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. Call for presentations and early registration for Security Weekly listeners is open now. Visit securityweekly.com/unlock to submit your presentation and register for the early registration price before it expires. Gentlemen, articles of the week. We got some related topics here to our last segment because I always like to bring those in. But I started with some CISO stories. And this first one, the 3 things every CISO wishes you understood. Jason, the first one was really interesting to me because we've known this, right? Like the CISO's role is changing before ours, of course. So why do we have people to understand that? But anyways, the other 2 were more interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's I did like this article, and it's 3 of many things practicing CISOs wish the organization understood, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, all right, the CISO's role is changing. So I'll put it into context just from my experience, right? And it's working with other business leaders and just, getting them up to speed on our industry and letting them know that, listen, it moves at such a rapid pace. Conversations we're having today may change tomorrow, and know that. Know that I'm here as an advisor to you within the business, and I'm going to bring you the latest intelligence that I have available to me, right? And know it's just rapidly changing. It's changing faster than the pace of technology because we have to keep ahead of that pace of technology. So, it's really getting the business unit leaders to understand the rapid pace of what we're doing, how quickly it's changing, how quickly we're integrating into the business, how quickly we're adding value outside of technology and adding value to our clients. So it's really just having that conversation. I actually liked that one because that's more of an exercise in leadership versus the technology or the cybersecurity practice or the practitioner side. This is more of a leadership skill to be communicating, that pace of change within our industry. We have to be doing that.
Yeah, and understand its impact to the business, right?
Yep,
which is the whole second one, which is where I see the real value is that you're communicating, collaborating across the different business units to understand how the industry changes can or will impact the business side of this so that you can come to the table and have a conversation on how best to move forward.
100%. And I added in here one piece that was missing, and that's customer interaction, right? Not just internal business units, but from my perspective, I have the philosophy of I want to get in front of our customers as well and have those conversations. I want to know what our customers' needs are to make sure that we're adhering to them and making sure that, what we fall in line with their needs and their regulatory and compliance needs and cybersecurity needs as a third-party vendor. So, it's internal business relationships across the entire organization. And hey, by the way, don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone and start having conversations with your customers as well. Partners, third-party vendors, all of that.
Yeah, and you see that a lot more in your day to day than some of us do. At least, well, I mean, I do. I'm talking to our customers all the time, but not everybody gets that opportunity, especially like you do, to get out there and talk to partners and customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The more relationships you can build, the better context and base of knowledge you're going to have, and it's just going to be a feeder system of information and trading information. I don't know how many times I have conversations with security leaders at customers where I'm like, listen, let's bounce ideas off of each other, let's work together, let's collaborate, let's share information. So it becomes a great network.
I got a question for you, Jason. Sure. How much of that the common idea of what the CISO does, do you think comes from where they are in the organization, who they report to?
So here's my personal philosophy and the way that I've always operated myself. My title, and I'm going to talk about this later in another article, my title and my level in the organization does not stop me from being a cybersecurity leader for the entire company. It's not going to stop me, right? So whether or not I need to start evangelizing upstream, influencing upstream, and driving upstream, if I have to do that, I will, right? And I've done it in the past. Where I've had, layers of leadership between myself and the CEO. And, I worked very, very hard to start influencing upstream and ultimately ended up reporting to the CEO. So, I don't allow a title or a hierarchy to dictate my leadership style.
I like that approach, by the way, because we will get into it in that one article, but let's wait because I have some different angles on that article. Critical initiatives for the second half of the year. Now, this came from a vendor, but it was interesting because it's got the vendor slant on it, but these are some of the big areas we were just talking about a little bit in the previous segment, which is why I left this article in. It talks about some of the challenges around SOC automation. It talks extended detection and response in some of the buzz terms. So I thought it was interesting. I'm curious, Jason, though. This can't be the whole list, and and
it's definitely not in order of priority either. I ended up putting it in an order of priority from what I'm seeing out there in the industry from customers and the conversations we're having. And I'll kind of lay it out for everybody and I'll give the why. So I put number one and really close number two together, and they, depending on your organization, they could flip flop, but it's cloud transformation and remote workforce monitoring. Those are two I hear a lot of. And here's why. It's the business initiative that's pushing that. It's the business, right? In some instances, it's happening with or without the security team. So jump on board if you can, right? Because it's going to happen no matter what. The other aspects we have a little bit more control over, right? The extended detection and response, which I put at a number 3 because, people are thinking about, I need better context. I need less overhead. I need less tools. So they're having those conversations. Then I put security operations center next because they're having that, build versus buy type conversation about having, a SIM SOC type service. And I'm hearing that a lot these days. What do? Do I bring in talent? Oh, wait a minute. I can't find talent. Right. So who can I go partner with? Right. Mm-hmm. From the SIM SOC perspective. And what I put detecting and preventing insider threats. I see that coming as part of other conversations like, that SIM SOC conversation or that building out a program conversation that they're having. I kind of put that in number 5. And then analytics and risk-based controls, until they get all those other things straight, unless it's a risk organization, they're not having those conversations right now.
Right. And that's the fear, right? Is because we can't have the broader, risk conversations right now. We're just way too tactical, just trying to deal with the day-to-day.
That's the problem, right? And it's working with clients on that journey to maturity. And once you start getting that risk-based mindset, now they're starting to think in that area, right? But a lot of these things are coming up front for organizations that have small security teams, if they can find the talent. You're seeing a lot of folks doing the vCISO where they have to outsource to another company and have a vCISO come in. So
one thing I found confusing here, given the conversation we just had about XDR, why is XDR separate from SOC automation here? Like, isn't that a component of XDR?
Yeah, I do. I think it is, right? I think if you're thinking in that ecosystem security fabric mindset, like we've been talking about for months on the show, yeah, it is. It's a similar conversation. So That's why I tether them 3 and 4, right? Because they're a lot of times they're part of the same conversation.
Right.
But again, I put 1 and 2, the things that are outside of the control of the security team, because they're happening. They're gonna happen with or without the security team.
Yeah. Talking about risk, the risk of disconnect between CIOs and CISOs, unless you own both roles, I guess,
Some people have.
Yeah, some people have figured that out. But this. I guess this could be a challenge, right? They talk about
critical. It's absolutely critical. Oh my God. Yes, 100%. There needs to be a very strong relationship between the CIO and the CISO, no matter where each other fall in the org, right? Again, it's a conversation of lead from whatever level you're at. If you report to the risk officer, you have to have a good relationship with the CIO. If you report to the CIO, you should have a good relationship with your boss, right? If you fall in another department, if you're on your own, right? If you're running as a peer to the technology team, you have to have that great relationship. Now, I would argue you want that same type of great relationship with all of the other business leaders as well, right? Honestly, you really do. But technology obviously plays a big role in cybersecurity, so that's a critical relationship right there.
Yeah, and Adrian, you brought it up in the previous segment about the outcomes report, and one of the other takeaways from that outcomes report was retiring legacy systems, and that is a CIO conversation on technology refresh to reduce your security risks. And if the CIO and the CISO aren't having those conversations, they're never going to achieve that outcome.
No,
I think that was the number one correlation on that report. Out of all the outcomes they found, proactive tech refresh was number one for helping to achieve security objectives.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that technical debt plays a big role in there, right? And honestly, the other thing I would say is involve other key stakeholders. Like I said, have that same kind of relationship with other business unit leaders. If you're talking about security around an ERP system, bring the CFO into the conversation. They're an opinion, they're a stakeholder. Why not? Right? If you're talking about systems that affect your HR team or your services team, whatever the case may be, bring in those other stakeholders because now you can have a very holistic conversation with the CIO, with yourself, and with that business unit owner, right? With the business unit owner, and really talk about outcomes for the organization as a whole. Because yourself as a CISO could be sitting down with the CIO, make some decisions, and then all of a sudden you have the CFO say, "That's not how it works. No, you didn't even talk to me, right? You didn't have a conversation with me. It's going to affect my entire team. It's not how it works." And they're going to put a big roadblock up in front of that. So involve other stakeholders when you're having those conversations, because you're not living in a silo where it's just technology and security. It's technology, security, and the business.
Right. And I think what's interesting with the things I learned, like at Cyber Risk Alliance, you start with the CFO because it's all about revenue and EBITDA impacts to any changes you want to make. So you just learn that early here.
Yeah, you make them happy, everybody's going to be happy.
Right.
Exactly right. Exactly right. We can have the platform discussions later. We better make sure the money's there.
Yeah, it's like the if mama's happy, everybody's happy. It's the CISO in an organization, or the CFO.
The CFO, yeah, it's always CFO. That ties into this BISO story, right? We talked the BISO a couple months back. This new role of Business Information Security Officer. What is it? Is it necessary? What I took away from this in large organizations, I don't think small organizations, a BISO is necessary. I don't think there's a big enough. But when you get into very large, highly distributed organizations, I think having this role is very interesting to work to enable more security awareness, more integration with the business units. I thought these 4 points of kind of some of the areas that the BISO can focus on for the CISO were actually positive.
Oh, absolutely. I always equate it to having, back in the day, and it still happens now, right? CIOs always had high-level business analysts embedded within the business unit, so they could be that translator between technology and the business, right? And it was really that relationship of go in there, understand the business, so that way we can properly serve the business, right? The business unit. And really guide them through their technology journey, because we understand what they're doing. I look at this role as the same. And to be honest with you, take the title away. I feel that a security team should understand the business, right? So you should have team members who are engaged with finance, who are engaged with HR, who are engaged with the services unit, whatever the case may be. And again, it may not be a BISO role, but have folks who understand the business, who can have the business conversation and translate it back to the security team, and vice versa. Translate security initiatives back to the business unit. It's beneficial. I think it's a strategic move. It's like playing chess, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're thinking ahead for those organizational units, and you're bringing that deep relationship in there, because now they realize you understand their business, you understand their pains, and you understand the outcomes they're trying to achieve for the company.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like overall the theme that you're talking about there, Jason, is we need to be more social. We need to build some equity in the company, have these conversations, have relationships with other folks in the organization. If you're the CISO, it's if you want to be treated like another executive, act like one.
Absolutely, and understand what they do. Having that deeper level understanding of how they function as a business unit, their processes, their staff, what strategic outcomes they're looking to achieve. Having that level of understanding is important, right? And again, if you're a large organization, you can put bodies in front of that and say, I need someone embedded within every business unit. That's the BISO model. Or you can be a smaller organization and maybe have 5-6 people. And, myself as a CISO, I'm responsible for knowing HR and finance and those. And maybe my director, I give some responsibility in understanding some of the other business units and building those relationships, right? And you scale it down from a personnel perspective, but that doesn't mean don't have the understanding, don't have the relationships, right? That doesn't mean that. You still want to go out there and have those relationships and have that understanding of the business.
Agreed. All right, now our hot button article of the day, I think. What does it take to be a cybersecurity professional? I like how the article started, but then it lost me. I got completely lost in the middle of this thing. I love the way he framed this around the pilots and the shortage of pilots. My neighbor's a pilot. We talk about this all the time. Just getting pilots back to work, getting them trained, getting them back certified, etc., is a challenge for the airline industry. And he uses that analogy in the cybersecurity profession. I was like, yes, now give me a path. And it wasn't there.
No, you're absolutely right. I felt the same way reading the article. He pointed out in with pilots, there's the shortage of qualified people. There's a talent gap with the existing people because they haven't, they've fallen behind over the course of the pandemic and they haven't been keeping up. There's a ton of new folks who want to get involved. And there's a ton of job openings, right? And they're in the middle of that struggle. That's where we are in a cybersecurity world, right? There wasn't a lot of solution conversation here, but I think we touched upon it a little bit in the previous segment, right? It's how do we start getting internships and co-ops to get people up to speed, right? And really get them embedded in a security team and learning the day-to-day of what that means. How do we start taking, curriculum in university and make people workforce ready? Because there's so many instances where we get folks coming right out of school, right out of college, and we have to spend 6 months training them on the real world. I don't think that's right. They should be workforce ready. And then pipelining, right? Not every high school student, not every 12th grader is going to be ready for college when they graduate, if they're ready for college at all. How do we empower them, right, going through 12th grade to be workforce ready out of the gate for an entry-level cybersecurity job? I think we got to take a holistic approach across the board if we want to tackle that. And we have to look at it from every angle.
Yeah, agreed. And where I wanted to take this a little bit is living one exit from the Air Force Academy, where my son just graduated high school. I think about the program. I think about they go to flight school, they learn to fly, they serve their country. They then come into the commercial side. The commercial entities recruit out of those different programs. They build training curriculum around the different aircraft. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine. And where I wanted him to go with this article was, how do we do a better job tying into these programs from a recruitment? How do we build better training programs to bring these folks in at a junior level and get them up to speed? Because I think you could learn a lot from what the airline industry does, bringing those pilots out of the military, making them commercial ready, and getting them off onto their careers. If we could do something analogous to that, that might be a better way to do this, which includes internships and all the other things you talked about, but he didn't go there.
But what does that take, right? That takes a, I say shared responsibility all the time, because I really believe we have to be attacking these things from multiple places. That's a shared responsibility between multiple organizations, right? Number one, industry, because we have to be opening up those internships and co-ops and letting those kids in, right? Higher ed, they have to engage with industry to make sure we're developing workforce ready curriculum, right? So they can get out of college and get to work right away for us. It's government, because Department of Labor and Training, that matters. That funding matters, coming from a federal level and a state level. And by the way, the government from a state Department of Education perspective for K through 12, they need to have better CTE programs where they're partnering with industry, and we're helping them build that entry level curriculum. So that way in 12th grade, when they graduate, they have some college credits, maybe they have some certifications, and maybe they can actually get to work right away if they're not ready to go to college.
I think the difficulty with this analogy is that cybersecurity is not like, finding pilots. It's more like running an airport. Like there's such a wide range of skill sets you need and jobs you need done. Flying a plane is a very specific skill set. And sure, we've got some of those within cybersecurity. But I don't think you can use that to describe our hiring difficulties entirely. And I think part of the problem is taking any job within cybersecurity and immediately saying, you need these cybersecurity degrees and certifications and things like that. And if you look at Andy Ellis, who was the CISO at Akamai for something like 20 years, gave a great interview on another podcast. I think it was Alan Alford's podcast, who has actually been on either BSW or ESW. He's got a podcast called Cyber Ranch. And he goes over a lot of the clever things he's learned about hiring over the years. And he hires journalists when he needs somebody to write reports, because Akamai produces a lot of reports. And he's like, well, who's good at writing and producing reports? Journalists. So he goes finds a journalist that's covered cybersecurity, that already knows the lingo and stuff like that. He hires teachers. If you strip off the title of the job rec and you just look at the skills you need in there, you found there was a heavy overlap with teacher skill sets. He hires librarians. You need somebody to organize a whole bunch of information. Who cares what buzzwords are in use? Go find somebody who's really good at taking a ton of data and organizing it. Librarians are literally taught to do that. Nobody is taught to do that in the cybersecurity space. They most of the degrees are based on forensics, for God's sakes.
Yeah, and see, that's where I think industry, working with departments of labor and training, can make some headway, because there are folks who are without work currently, whose background could, lend to some level of diversity in the cybersecurity team. Like you just mentioned, right? There may be out of work librarians who need a job. And if you can tie your job description to that skill set, why wouldn't you hire, right? It's a skill set that you need. But that's where I think finding folks who had other careers, working with a DLT, a Department of Labor and Training, and finding those folks and being able to bring them into your organization is key.
That's where Mr. Bill Brenner cut some of his early cybersecurity journalistic skills before we ended up bringing him here to run our custom content team. So
and Martin McKay was an analyst, and Steve Reagan is there now. And he was a journalist for a long time.
Yeah,
it's up to us to go hunt. It's up to us to go hunt for that talent, though, because if you put a job description out there, folks may not want to apply because they're scared, because it's not their industry. It's out of their comfort zone, out of their lane, right? It's up to us to go recruit and find.
Right. It's funny you say that, Jason, because when I built out the new team, I actually did the recruiting before I did any job description. I was out looking for the skill set I wanted, talking to the people I wanted. Then I wrote the job description after I talked to them and a few other people about what I was looking for. Because you're right. Sometimes you write the job description, it turns people off. But when you talk to them first, they're like, yeah, send me the job description when you have it. I'm good. Getting Bill and Deb to come over, I was recruiting them before I even had a job description in mind.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Through networks. That's the best way to hire people. There's already a trust relationship there. You already know them, or somebody else who works with you already knows them. But I think to summarize it, people saying that the hiring pool is too small. There's no unemployment. The problem isn't that the pool is too small. The problem is that their hiring criteria is too narrow.
Yep. Agreed. Agreed.
Yep. We're fishing in too small of a pond. We need to open it up.
Yep.
Yeah. Two more articles. NIST defines the critical application components. This is a really interesting article because NIST has started to define this is considered critical software as part of the executive order. And when you read this, you start thinking, wait a minute, designed to run with elevated privilege or managed privileges. Well, that's pretty much every endpoint.
We were talking about too
on
narrow.
Every box.
We were talking too narrow. Now we're talking way too broad.
Yep.
Right.
Agreed. In the article, it was talking about, this is a journey. It's going to be refined. And I read that sentence. I said, thank God. Because it has to, right? I mean,
yeah, it has director privileged access to networking or computer resources. It's pretty much every endpoint agent. Control access to data or operational technology, performs a function critical to trust. I mean, this is a really, really broad scope. There is going to be a ton of software that gets categorized under this definition, and people just need to be aware of it now because you think about anything that has management capabilities, security control capabilities, they all fall under the scope.
Right. So my PDF reader may be excluded.
Yeah. Well, that's the danger right there. From a vendor perspective, every vendor gets to say that, they qualify for this special budget that you've got for critical software.
Yeah. No thanks. Okay. Last story.
Too broad.
I have to throw that article in there. Right. Because I think people have to know this eyes wide open. You're out developing a piece of software those are pretty broad components to be classified that way. Anyways, that means SBOM and all this other stuff come into play. So just forewarned. This last article is on cyber insurance, and this one talks about how cyber insurance premiums have gone up by a third. A third is nothing to what I think is coming. This article talks about the written policies, the scope of those policies, the change in how those policies are going to be written. I think a third higher is nothing compared to what's coming.
No. I mean, these insurance organizations got slapped in the face with what cybersecurity really means, and now they're realizing they're under the gun. So I see prices going up, and honestly, I see requirements getting more stringent. I'm already having conversations with insurance providers that are saying we need to do more than just the checklist. We need to do an assessment of technical debt. We need to do an assessment of security posture, things like network security assessments and penetration tests and, technical debt assessments prior to actually signing these organizations on board. So that way they know what level of risk they're taking on and they can price accordingly.
And I think it's not a huge surprise. We saw that coming. I mean, they before you get life insurance, you gotta jump through some hoops there. Do you smoke tobacco? How long have you smoked tobacco? We knew this was coming. They just needed enough data to be able to do it. So it shouldn't be a huge surprise. But the flip side of it, not just what you're required to do and how much they pay out. and whether they're willing to pay out, another side of it is, they're going to be looking at ways to reduce the costs. And one of the things I've seen come up is, no, we know who you have on retainer is amazing, but they're super expensive. So you have to respond to this incident using our team, our pre-approved vendors.
Yeah, I see that all the time. Where the first thing I see the cyber liability insurance companies doing is they assign a fiduciary, an attorney. They literally penny pinch every spend, right? They have to sign off on every penny spent. And then from there, we have, our incident response team, and that's all you can do. You can't bring in your own. We have ours, and this is who you're going to use.
Yep. Yeah, and they're going to control the recovery process. They're going to control the vendors. Everything's going to get controlled. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to exclude as much as they can out of an attack. That's the other thing that's coming, right? You're going to start to look at different exclusionary clauses in certain scenarios where they don't even have to pay anything because they're going to figure out a way to reduce their payouts at some point.
Yep. 100%.
Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. And we'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.